beings. Concern for the environment thus needs to be joined to a sincere love for our fellow human beings and unwavering commitment to resolving the problems of society. In the silence of our hearts, we ask you to send your Holy Spirit, dear Lord, to pour upon us the gift of wisdom so we may hear your will, for your will is always what is right. All these we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Tessa. And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to once again to Kamayan para sa Kalikasan Forum, a monthly environmental forum that we used to hold at the Kamayan restaurant. But of course, for now, because of the pandemic, we have to do it online, and we're glad that we can still do it. This is the 361st session of Kamayan para sa Kalikasan Forum. We have been around uh, for 30 years. So we started in March of 1990, and we have held it without interruption for the past 30 years. We are not going to let the pandemic interrupt our forum. Welcome once again. Isang mainit na pagtanggap sa inyong lahat at kalikasang pagbati. Normally, at this point, we call on the president of Green Convergence, Dr. Nina Galang, to give the opening remarks, but she's having problems with connectivity, internet connectivity right now, so she will join us as soon as the problem is fixed. You know, that's the problem with online communication. There are so many glitches, but let's do the best we can. So, before we proceed, we usually explain how we proceed with the forum. The regulars know this already, but we always have new ones coming in. So we have to review the procedure. Our topic is implications of the anti-terror bill on the environment. We have three parts to the forum proper, and that's part one is a discussion of the main topic by our resource speakers. During part one, we are not allowed to ask questions. We are just going to listen, take down notes, note down our questions if we have any, so that we can ask the questions on part two. That's when all the questions will be asked. You can do it by raising your hand. You can do it by through chat if you don't want to verbalize your questions. But the guidelines for the open forum will be discussed later on. And then that's part two. All the questions will be asked, verbal or written. And then it's on part three where the responses will be given by our speakers. On part two, it's the turn of the speakers to take down notes, what the questions are so that they can answer them. Sometimes the questions can be put together, so that we save time. This is the most efficient process we have devised through 30 years of Kamayan, so that we can take in more questions, more people can participate. So bear with us. At this point, I would like to introduce my co-host, co-moderator, and that is Dr. Carlo Garcia. He's a board member of Green Convergence. He's also executive director of Environmental Studies Institute of Miriam College. Welcome, Carlo.
Oh, thank you, Marie, and I'm happy to be your co-moderator today. Good
Me
afternoon,
too.
everyone.
Okay. Um, we have already talked about the program flow. You know, this topic is very close to our hearts. It's a gut national issue. It has already attracted so many controversies, and that's why we have experts to talk about it, so that we can be enlightened as to what we should be worried about or what we should welcome with this law. Also invited Senator Grace Poe to represent the yes vote, but unfortunately she's not able to make it, or she did not confirm her participation. So um, we have two guests, very eminent guests, and but before we give them to you, let us hear about the house rules from Carlo. Carlo.
Okay. Uh, Participants are welcome to speak, of course, and ask questions, but only during the open forum. All participants will be auto-muted while the session is ongoing. Participants may use the chat box when they have comments during the session, or if they have questions during the open forum that they prefer not to ask verbally. And lastly, participants are expected to be respectful to each other.
Okay, thank you, Carlo. Everyone is also expected to observe online etiquette, such as be still and attentive. Make sure there are no distracting movements or background on the video. Settle in a quiet spot where your face will be well lit and noise is 0 to minimal. We want to see you, so please stay where the light is good. Take notes if needed. Be patient. Have pen and pencil ready, a pen and paper ready. Be patient. Oh yes, please be patient with technical difficulties. These are normal. Look at the camera, not the screen when talking. So with that, we are ready for part one of the forum proper, the discussion of the main topic, and Carlo will introduce our first speaker.
Marie, is he there already? Is he with
Oh,
us already?
okay, let's ask our host.
Yes po.
Is Attorney
Yes,
Neri
I'm
there
here.
already?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So
Okay.
thank you for giving me this opportunity to introduce our first speaker. Our first resource speaker is a longtime human rights lawyer, was the senior deputy minority leader for the. He co-authored several laws on human rights during his 3 terms as a member of the House of Representatives. He is currently the chairman of the National Union of People's Lawyers. Let us welcome Attorney Neri Colmenares.
Hello.
Hello, hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yes, hi.
Yes.
Yes, thank you for the introduction, Carlo, and maraming salamat sa imbitasyon. Andiyan din si Sister Mary John. Siguro, I'm sure she will discuss further on the bill and its implications on environment and environmental activists. No? So sige, I'll go straight to my talk. No? Kasi nabanggit nga kanina, very controversial ito. Sayang at wala dito sila Senator, at least yung mga nag-yes na mga senators para at least na-clarify sana yung ilang mga points. But in any case, let's see kung I will try to traverse din yung mga sinasabi ng nag-yes para naman ma-judge nyo for yourselves kung saan yung medyo may reasonableness. No? So let's go straight. I think I have a slides dyan, pero before that, siguro bakit siya ni-rush sa gitna ng pandemya. So when we question them about it. Ang sagot nila, kasi bakit nyo inuna yon? Marami namang bills dyan. For example, may mga bills dyan, say increasing the pension of senior citizens, na mga social pension, to at least 1,000 pesos a month, no? Environment and so on. Ang sagot nila, kailangan ito para sa protection ng mamamayan, na very difficult to agree with kasi merong draconian na anti-terror law ngayon, no? Human Security Act. And contained na doon yung mga surveillance, mga warrantless arrests. And at the same time, may maraming laws tayo dito that really prohibit terrorists, no? Hindi nila pwedeng sabihin na kung wala ang terror law, mambobombard halimbawa ang Abu Sayyaf sa Metro Manila, walang batas na nagpo-prohibit sa kanila. Sabi ko nga palagi, bomb joke nga ka no? So they said na, well, actually, there is no law that prohibits kasi foreign terrorists. Kaya kailangan ito. I think a congresswoman said that. Medyo pedophile ka nga lang, kulong ka sa Pilipinas So, paano naging allowed yung foreign terrorist dito? Sabi ko nga, foreign pedophile ka lang. Anyway, mga batas naman natin, whoever you are, whatever is your nationality, if you commit murder in the Philippines, you commit bombings here, you're liable, di ba? Hindi naman pwedeng para sa Pilipino lang yung revised penal code. So, hindi namin makita yung rush na ito. At against the groups that government calls terrorists. I mean, hindi natin maisip na halimbawa, huhulihin na lang o babarilin na lang ng army ang Abu Sayyaf. Sabihin nila, wala palang terror law, sorry, hindi ko pala pwedeng hulihin yon. And we've been asking them a lot, what is the problem with the Human Security Act? Draconian na nga yan. Wala sila actually mapinpoint. I was there in the hearing when I asked that question. At wala sila pinpointed. Sabi nila, may 500,000 pesos kasi na penalty. Pag nagkamali kami, may unlawful arrest. So, sabi ko doon sa hearing na yun, pag-usapan natin yun. Pero bakit nyo ni-redefine ng terrorism, binrodin nyo? Bakit nyo nilengthen yung warrantless arrest? Dati 3 days lang. Ngayon, 3 days lang yan sa new terror law, 24 days. Bakit nyo binigyan ng maraming kapangyarihan ng Terror Council? Hindi nyo naman pala problema. So, hindi talaga satisfied dyan. And in fact, marami sa mga kongresista ang this is the reverse of the Senate. Kasi maraming kongresista ang nagsabi na, nga naman, parang gano'n. In fact, sa isang hearing, tinanggal na mga kongresista kasi invited ang opposition sa bill sa House na hindi nangyari sa Senate. That's why gusto ko sana may senador dito. Why didn't you invite the opposition? Tinanggal yung Section 34, yung restrictions on the right to travel kasi maraming mga kongresista nagsabing, mahirap ata yun. Nagpiyansa ka na. I'll discuss that later. Nagpiyansa ka na, house arrest ka pa rin. So, pero anyway, dahil sa ang House kasi invited oppositors, tapos hindi masagot fully ng mga proponents yung mga tanong, na impatient siguro sila, kaya ang ginawa nila, yung Senate version yung inimpose sa House. At nabaliwala ang lahat ng hearing sa House. Kaya pag sinasabi nilang, hindi naman ni Ratchada yan, may hearing siya. Ilan? Yung mga hearing sa House kasi nabaliwala nyo, di ba? So parang hindi talaga nila ma-explain na, do you really need this for the terrorists? Sa Pilipinas lang, drug suspect ka nga lang, patay ka How much more kung terrorist suspect ka? So do you really need this law? Parang hindi maubos maisip ng marami doon na, anong talagang kailangan? Story talaga doon, this is intended for legitimate dissent, no? Lalo na dumarami ang protest, lalo na itong quarantine period. Parang magsasaka, mga driver, mga estudyante, parang nag-rally, nagpo-protesta. So ang hinala ng marami, it's really intended for dissent. But in any case, you judge for yourself. So let's go to the slide. No? Ano ang definition ng sa first slide? No? Ang definition, can we go to the slide, please? So anyway, yung problema sa batas na ito, under Section 4, the law does not penalize the act. It penalizes the intention. Kasi sa batas natin, kung nag-commit ka ng acts, halimbawa sa Human Security Act, you commit bombings, you commit arson, kidnapping, hijacking, lahat yan. At yun ang mga na-commit mo, then pwede kang pumasok doon. Yung Section 4 nila engages in acts. Hindi nila sinabi that the act must be illegal. It's any act, kung pansinin nyo. So it could be legal. It could be a legal act. Ang kinaiba lang, it is intended to endanger another person's life. Ito ngayon ang problema, sabi ng marami. Sino mag-i-impute ng intention? Kayo yun eh. Kayo ang mag-impute. Kahit wala kaming ginagawang illegal, ang sabihin nyo, no, it's intended to endanger another disperse at hinuhuli ng mga pulis dahil you're endangering public health. May quarantine ngayon, bawal ang rally. Which is not true, of course. Wala namang batas na nagsabing bawal ang rally sa quarantine period. So, ordinary rally, basta sabihin lang nila na intended to endanger another person's life, pwede. So, any form of dissent, pwede pala yan. Depende sa ini-impute ng gobyerno na intention mo. At nakita naman natin sa mahabang red position ng mga aktivista dito, kahit bishop, sinasabihan may mga kaso to overthrow government, may sedition sila Bishop Sok Villegas, etc. Hindi satisfied yung public na hindi kami kasama dito, especially since tingin ng karamihan, hindi nyo naman kailangan yung batas na to for the actual terrorists. Diba? So very sa sunod naman na part niyan, yung sa section 4, please continue na lang. Nakalagay diyan, intended in any act intended to interfere, cause extensive interference with critical infrastructure. At yung definition ng batas sa critical infrastructure, transportation, information system and technology, telecom, industry, etc., private and public, kumbaga ng mga industries, etc. So sabi namin, po ako but I wouldn't understand kung anong act ang pinuprohibit niyan. I mean, who can interpret that? You cause extensive interference with critical infrastructure? Abay, mahirap yun. Kayo, environmental activists kayo. Yun naman lahat siguro. We have been advocating for environmental rights. Sometimes, militant ang struggle ng environmental activists. Bakit? Kasi, halimbawa, mina yan, and I've heard of destructive sa indigenous people, destructive sa water, sa pollution sa hangin, may noise pollution pa, flora, fauna, productivity, lahat yan. So, ang mga tao dyan, buhay ang ang nakaano sa mina eh. Kaya, ang militant ang struggle dyan. May mga ilan ngayon, I know, doon sa DDPO, yung sa Oceana Gold, nagparikada sila. Pagparikada nila, hindi nila pinapapasok despite the non-renewal of the FTAA, di ba? Can that be interpreted as a serious interference with the critical infrastructure? Pwede. Pwede. Hinaharang mo yung hinaharang mo yung kalsada eh. Di ba? In fact, sabi ko nga, under that definition, EDSA 1, people power, is nothing more than a terrorist act. Bakit? 4 na araw kayong nasa EDSA eh. 4 na araw. to influence government kasi you want Marcos to step down. So talagang papasok diyan. You interfered with transportation system. Hindi makapasok yung tao diyan sa makadaan sa EDSA. So what was considered by the world as an act of a people, courageous act of a people against a ruthless dictator is nothing more than a terrorist act under this law. So talagang grabe. This is really against ordinary dissent. So yun yung fear nila diyan. Ang sagot nila, well, hindi lang naman intention ang ginigauge namin. May next part pa yan. So you can go to the next slide please. Ang sabi nila, well, dapat kasi may purpose ka naman. At ang nature at context ng purpose mo ay ganito, is to intimidate the general public or a segment thereof. Sabi, at sunod pa dyan, karugtong yan, is to create the government. Pakitapos na lang siya, yung buong slide. Influenced by intimidation, the government. Sabi ko, lahat naman ng rally want to influence government. Kung ano man yung inyong hinihingi dyan, may hinihingi kayo, di ba? Ganon naman ang rally. I mean, kaya ka nga nag-rally because you want government to, I don't know, stop corruption, to stop the oil deregulation law, or price ng Meralco, and there are many issues. And you want to influence government. At tingin nila, rallies are intimidating. It's your problem. If government is intimidated by a rally, it's your problem. It's not us. It's not the problem of the rallies, di ba? Ito, create an atmosphere of fear. The purpose is to create an atmosphere of fear. Under the current Human Security Act, at least, yung nakalagay dyan, it resulted in an atmosphere of fear. Ibig sabihin, may ginawa ka chaos. Dito, you may not even create fear. Sasabihin lang nila, your purpose is to create an atmosphere of fear. So sabi namin, babalik na naman ulit sa inyo na kayo na mag-impute ng purpose. Kung pansinin nyo kanina sa intention, I may not have bombed anybody, but they would say, oh, you intended to bomb. Diba? I may not have endangered another person's life, but they can say, well, you intended to endanger another person's life. Kasi intimidated a segment of the public. Well, pwede. A segment could be yung mga may-ari ng minahan. Oh, I mean, yung segment kasi is a very broad, vague term. Na-intimidate yung supporters ni President Duterte. So, is it our problem if they got intimidated? Ang problem dito, they didn't even get intimidated. Ang sasabihin na ng gobyerno, your purpose is to intimidate. And that mga senators, why did they allow this? Parang in the end, mga kongresista pa nga ang nagpapalit ng boto, di ba? Actually, the senators got away with it. Kasi nakafocus ang lahat sa House eh. Kasi yung House ang pinakalas. But the Senate approved it as early as February 26. So, ni isa sa kanila, wala akong narinig na nagsabing, oh, I changed my mind upon consultation, upon hearing the side. In this case, at least, yung mga kongresista na medyo may mga nagbago ng isip. So, sa amin, sa marami, is really an overbroad that it can encompass what is otherwise a constitutional and a legal right. So, yun yung sa definition. Next slide, please. So, other than that, pag ganun na yung definition ng terrorism, everything falls into place. Na yung terrorism na definition conspiracy to commit terrorism or proposal to commit or whatever. Lahat na ng terrorist acts dyan sa ilalim, problematic na. Anyway, ang sagot nila dyan in the end, di bale, may safeguards naman eh. But if you look at Section 4, which is where the supposed safeguard is in, Look at the definition and you judge for yourself. Sabi nila, terrorism as defined in this act shall not include advocacy, protest, dissent, stop, civil and political rights, which are not intended, pakidiretso na lang, which are not intended to endanger a person's life. O sinasabi namin, babalik na naman tayo. Yung safeguard nyo, bumalik na naman doon sa definition nyo kung anong intensyon. So bali walang safeguard kasi kahit nagrarally kami, nagpo-protest kami, ang sabihin nyo, no, hindi yan civil and political right. Ano yan? Terrorism yan kasi you intended to endanger another person. Tandakan nila. And to think the other safeguards, tinanggal nila. For example, yung 500,000 pesos. There were debates noon sa House. Oh, magkano ba gusto nyo? 10,000? 20,000 pesos? Hindi na nila. Tinanggal talaga nila yung safeguard na yon. And also, there is a provision under the current law na the terror law shall be suspended 1 month before and 2 months after an election. That is a recognition by the law na pwede talagang gamitin ng presidente ang 4 and 2 months after election. Pero yan, tinanggal din nila sa bagong batas. Kaya sabi ko sa mga senador, you created a monster that can devour you in 2022. Pag mali ang pili nyo ng partido, pwede kayong tamaan ng terror law na ito. Because hindi nyo pinasuspende. I mean, if you're just a suspect terrorist, grabe ng impact doon sa kandidato ng kabila, sa opposition. Freezing of bank accounts ka pa, di ba? If you freeze na yung bank accounts mo So, pag mangyari yon, paano ka pa kampanya, di ba? So, frozen na yung mga assets mo. So, leading to the next slide, please. Ito yung danger pag hindi suspended, warrantless arrest. The much discussed warrantless arrest under Section 29. You judge for yourself. Nakalagay sa Section 29, any law enforcement officer who, having been has taken custody of a person suspected of committing any terrorist act shall deliver said suspected person to the proper judicial authority within 14 days or up to 24 days without incurring a liability. So, cumbersome ang definition niya, pero ang ibig lang talaga sabihin niyan, pag may suspect na may hinuli ng isang pulis, at itong pulis ay may by the Anti-Terrorism Council, pwede niyang i-hold for 24 days without delivering that person to a judicial authority na wala siyang liability. So, ibig sabihin, ang deliver to a judicial authority sa law, it means filing a case in court. So, ang sagot dyan ng marami, hindi ba against yan sa Constitution? Kasi kung, next slide please, kung titingnan nyo sa Constitution, Article 7, privilege of the writ, and a person thus arrested or detained shall be judicially charged within 3 days, otherwise he shall be released. What part of otherwise he shall be released ang hindi naintindihan ng mga senador natin? Nakalagay dyan suspended pa nga ang writ niyan Pero pag may hinuli ka at may kinulong ka, dapat kasuhan mo siya within 3 days. Pag hindi mo siya nakasuhan on the 3rd day, he shall be released. So, ito, the Constitution practically prohibits na i-detain mo ang isang tao for more than 3 days na walang kaso. So ito, inaano mo ng 24 days, para sa amin, that's a direct contradiction of that, no? So hindi ko alam yung sinasabi nila dyan na ang warrantless arrest naman allowed. Yeah. Pero hindi mo pwede ikulong yung tao ng 24 days. And secondly, even sense of justice and fairness. Ikukulong mo ako for 24 days, ba't di mo ako kasuhan? I mean, kinulong mo na ako, di kasuhan mo na ako para makadepensa ako. But under the law, hindi wala akong forum na mapuntahan para mag-present ng ebidensya ko to prove na hindi ako terorista. I mean, there's nothing. Saan ako pupunta? Di ba? Wala talaga eh. Walang judicial charge eh. After 24 days, kung harassment lang ang purpose nila, kung after 24 days, pwede ka namang pala Sunday halimbawa, chacha halimbawa ang issue. O kaya environmental issue. Ilan ang patay na environmental activists dito sa Pilipinas. Last year, as of September 2019, ang nabilang is 113 environmental activists na namatay, extrajudicial killings. Ang hindi ko alam kung nasama na dyan yung mga DNR forest guards na pinatay sa Palawan, di ba? So, hulihin lang yung leader ng environmental group for 14 days. Sabihin, wag na abutin yung 24 days. Saan pa pupulutin yung rally nyo? Di ba? After 14 days, sabihin lang sa'yo ng pulis, sorry, sige, pwede ka nang lumaya. Tapos na. And that's it. Ganun ba tayo dito? So, yun yung mga comment dyan ng marami na hindi siya, hindi lang siya unconstitutional. It's also against basic sense of justice and fairness. Meron pa bang karugtong yung slide na yan? Article 3, Section 2, no warrant of arrest shall issue except upon probable cause to be determined personally by the judge. So yan, hindi ka pwedeng hulihin ng walang warrant unless you're committing a crime in front. Ito dito, ang nagbigay ng warrant technically is yung Anti-Terrorism Council. Di ba? Sabi nila, if you're committing a crime kasi in front of the police officer, pwede kang hulihin. Yes, pag yung committing a crime in front of you, tapos pupunta ka pa sa Anti-Terrorism Council, hihingi ka pa ng written authority. No. The written authority is pre-given. Ibig sabihin, long before you're arrested, bibigay na yon. Ulihin nyo si Nery Colmenares. Reklamador yan. Maraming. Yeah, so, hindi talaga papasok yung sinasabi nila. Hindi, ano lang to, pag warrantless arrest kasi, tsaka lang to may issue. That's parang improbable sa Anti-Terrorism Council. You don't even need that kasi pwede mo na siyang hulihin. So talagang pre-given ito. Bakit siya nakalagay sa Constitution, tong dalawang provision na yan? Kasi nung martial law, President Marcos used to detain people for months, even years, na walang kaso. Kaya pinagbawal ng Constitution na hindi na pwedeng maulit yon. Yung hinuhuli mo yung mga kung sino-sinong huliin mo, walang kaso. Kung gusto mo, kasuhan mo. Kaya may 3-day rule eh. And secondly, itong warrant naman, kasi President Marcos arrests. So, sabi ng Constitution, hindi na pwede yan. Korte lang dapat ang pwedeng mag-issue at hindi na iba. So, last 2 to 3 slides na lang siguro. No? So, in Section 34, for example, restriction on the right to travel. Basahin natin. In cases where the evidence of guilt is not strong and the person charged is granted bail, they may also be placed under house arrest by order of the court, and while under house arrest, may not use occasions with people outside the residence unless otherwise ordered by the court. Pwede ba yan? Parang, kaya ka nga mahina na ng ebidensya sa'yo. Halimbawa, gawa-gawa lang naman yung kaso. Kunyari, ganito ginawa mo, pero hindi naman totoo. So the evidence of guilt is not strong. Nagpiyansa ka na. Pero pwede ka pa palang ma-house arrest. Ba't ka pa nagpiyansa? Diba? At maliban dyan, na house arrest ka na, hindi ka pa pwedeng mag-communicate with anybody outside your residence, that wherever your house arrested, kumbaga. So, no internet, no Facebook, no Viber. Marami tayong kilala na hindi mabuhay ng isang araw pag walang Facebook o walang Twitter, di ba? So, paano ka if you're part of a big organization, if you're asking sa environment, yes, environment, opposition, activist, whatever organization, kulihin ka. Dahil gawa-gawa communicate with your members, how can you, kung officer ka, how can you lead the whatever movement or campaign you're having? You're not allowed to use the internet. Grabe, para nga sa akin, ano yan eh. That's akin to an incommunicado detention. Parang incommunicado ka. And to think, may piyansa ka pa nga eh, di ba? So, really, draconian na parang walang recognition doon sa is lost, you're presumed guilty until you prove later on that you're innocent. And of course, the right to bail. Right to bail is a basic right. And it's gone because of that provision. Next slide, please. Excuse me. Yan na ba yung last ko? Yeah, well, anyway, kasi, siguro may question and answer naman. Marami pang provisions yan. Ang mga provisions dyan like surveillance ng suspects, wiretapping, freeze 25, designation as a terrorist. Inserted yan sa Senate version. At ang designation walang judicial process yan. Dalawa kasi ang kanilang prescription dyan. Ang una, Section 26, prescription by court. Pa-file sila ng kaso sa inyo. Halimbawa, example lang to. Green convergence, terrorist. Pag-file ka sa korte, puprubahan mo na terrorist kami. Kapag may depensa din kami sa korte, we will also submit our own evidence, di ba? Hindi na nyo na kami mag-prescribe. Kasi judicial process yun eh. Tingin ko, ayaw nila masyadong pumasok doon. Nandyan pa rin yung Section 26, pero naglagay sila ng Section 25. Ito ang insertion. At pinapaalam pa namin sa Senado ngayon, kailan napasok yung Section 25? Kasi wala yan doon sa bills, wala yan sa committee report. Nung nag-deliberate sila on second reading sa Senado, wala rin yan. Ano ang Section 25? That the Anti-Terrorism Council, without any judicial process, can designate you as a terrorist. Di, balik na naman tayo saan ang forum namin? Saan ang forum namin to present our evidence na hindi kami terorista? Why should an executive branch of government designate me? Hindi man siya korte. Why can an executive kasi Anti-Terrorism Council, it's composed of the executive secretary ni President Duterte and of Justice. Lahat yan, mga cabinet members niya. The Anti-Terrorism Council can issue a warrant of arrest. The Anti-Terrorism Council can order you to be detained for 24 days without charges. The Anti-Terrorism Council can designate you as a terrorist. Hindi man siya korte. So basically, ni-usurp para sa amin ng executive ang napakaraming functions ng judiciary dito, and that's really violative of the rights of people. Ko lang, lalo na in times of pandemic, ang checks and balance very important. Ang dissent must not be prohibited. Dapat ang sabi ko nga sa gobyerno, look at dissent as a checks and balance mechanism. Look at dissent as a feedback mechanism. Nasabi ng mga barangay San Roque, hindi kami nakatanggap ng relief. Dapat ang attitude ng gobyerno dyan, hindi daw sila nakatanggap ng relief. Sila hulihin yung mga yan, nagprotesta kasi. Yung mga driver, nagrereklamo kasi gutom talaga sila. I mean, tayo, I don't know, kung merong isa sa atin na for 3 months, ni 5, wala kang income dahil pasada lang naman yung iyong pinagkakabuhayan, may 4-5 kang anak, tapos hindi ka ba magugutom yan? Hindi. Mabuti kung may dumating na ayuda, pero kahit na dumating yung ayuda sa'yo, it's 8,000. 10,000 pesos yun. Hindi ka mabubuhay sa 3 buwan. So, dapat ang sagot doon, bakit wala silang ayuda? Hanapan natin ang paraan para may livelihood sila. But the result was arresting Piston 6, di ba? So, nangyari. Ganon din ang mangyari ang aming fear sa any form of dissent. So, we really hope that President Duterte must be tolerant of dissent and this government, no? President Duterte naman, pag binibira ka niya, o bispo ka to sa'yo, pag binibira ka, PI mo, gago ka, Pag may magsabi rin gago siya, pagbigyan niya. I mean, hirap naman na ang buhay dito sa Pilipinas, isa lang yung tatawag ng gago ka. Pag may tumawag, may OFW kasi na tinawag siyang gago, may OFW na tinawag siyang gago, pinapa-deport nila. Pero sabi ko, bawat speech naman ng presidente, may tinatawag siyang gago eh. So, I mean, somebody calls him gago rin. That's the freedom of expression yan eh. Diba? So, sana ganun na rights natin. And lastly, bakit natin tututulan? Ako palagi kung sinasabi to. There will be pro-Duterte and anti-Duterte in the Philippines. But we must remember this. Ang presidents come and go. Wala namang presidenteng tumagal sa Pilipinas eh. Hindi naman forever yan eh. So in about 22 months time or even 21 months na nga lang siguro, President Duterte will no longer be there. Iiba na yung presidente natin. But if this will be here with us for a long period of time, condemning the next generation of Filipinos to a draconian society. This is not the society we want our children to live in. Isang lipunan na kung saan, ang anak ko, nag-Facebook lang hinuli kasi terorista. Yung anak ko, nag-Twitter lang. Ang anak ko, sumali lang sa rally. I mean, hindi mo alam eh. Ayaw ko na ang anak ko, naglalakad lang ma-riding in tandem. Di ba? Kasi we don't want our children to experience. And that is why sabi ko, whether you're pro-Duterte or anti-Duterte, dapat sana labanan itong terror law. Because this is going to condemn the next generation of Filipinos to repression. Kaya tama lang na labanan siya sa aming perspective, but you decide. Hindi pwedeng mag-neutral dito sa anti-terror law. As my favorite quote always is, na sana whether you're you're a nun or kung sino ka man, dapat pumosisyon dito sa anti-terror law. For after all, the hottest place in hell is reserved for those who remain neutral in the greatest issues in life. Maraming salamat po. Magandang hapon sa inyo.
Maraming salamat.
Thank you.
Attorney Colmenares, that was a very sober, clear, cool na cool ka lang. Ako galit na. Thank you so much. Our participants, did you write down your questions for Attorney Colmenares to ask on the second portion? Please do. And now, our next resource speaker, in high esteem and close to my heart. I don't even know if she remembers me, but we worked together for human rights during the dark days of the Marcos regime. She's a missionary Benedictine sister, esteemed theologian, and feminist activist. She helped forward women's rights, national agenda through her organizational work with various groups pushing for women's and children's rights. She's currently the director of the Institute of Women's Studies of St. Scholastica's College. To talk about the impact of the anti-terror law on environmental activists, I am Sister Mary John Manansan, OSB. Sister?
I thank you for inviting me, but actually quite uneasy kasi I don't know if I'm the best resource person for this because I'm not a lawyer, and Mary Colmenares has done that perfectly with the law. I am not an environmentalist expert. So, how come me? Why did you not get an environmentalist expert? my advocacies, but I am not
Yes.
expert in it.
You
So
don't
I
need to be an expert, sister. You don't
really,
need to be an expert.
really.
You're a
So
good person.
yeah, I would just want to acknowledge that I of course made some research and I talked to my two friends, Francis de la Cruz from the Institute of Climate and Sustainable Cities,
Cities, yes.
at saka si Marlon
Mhm.
Pareja na my friend na biology teacher ng De La Salle, no, DASMA, and experts. Dapat sila yung inimbita nyo. But anyway, I will dare to do this. So, as
Sir.
an introduction, I think Nery Colmenares, I have listened to him siguro 10 times already. So, memorize ko na halos yung kanyang sinabi. And he is the clearest sa narinig ko
That's
about,
right.
and I would just like to say that personally, why is it that I am against this that I have picked out from Colmenares? The first one is the changing of the definition of terrorism. Doon
Yes.
sa Human Security Act, klarong-klaro na yung terrorism na sinasabi, yung talaga mga ISIS, mga Abu Sayyaf, mga ganon. Klarong-klaro na yun ang pinupunterya. Itong law na to, dahil binroaden masyado ang definition, kasama talaga lahat ng dissenters and human rights activists, no? Kaya anti-constitution, ano ba namang klaseng lawyer na it's against the constitution? Ang pinaka very clear na sinabi ni Nery, iyon na nga, you are only supposed to be detained 3 days at dapat may kaso ka na ito 24 days. Sobra-sobra naman yon. And number 3 is that according to the basic justice law, you are innocent. You are innocent until you are proven guilty. Pero sa law na to, you are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. These people who are in the Senate, kung ako grade 5 lang ako, kahit na siguro hindi ako nakatapos, hindi naman ko siguro ipapas ang law na pareho ang punishment sa intention, pareho ang punishment sa act, pareho ang punishment sa threat. Bakit naman pare-parehong punishment yon? Di ba? At ang pinakahuli, nasabi ko, ano ba ang definition ng terrorism? Ang terrorism, ibig sabihin, nagkakalat ng lagim. Well, itong act na to, magkakalat tawag natin dito, hindi anti-terrorism. This is an act of state terrorism. Nagkakalat ng lagim ang Estado. Yun po ang aking comment lang doon sa law na yan. Okay? Okay. So, ako bang ano nito? Next, please.
Yes, sister, there.
Okay. First of all, I want to define ano ba to? Ang environmental activists are persons who advocate for or work towards protecting the ang standard definition ng environmental activist. Next, please. Tinignan ko, ano bang mga organization na environmental dito sa Pilipinas na sila ang matitreaten later on. Kaya tinignan ko muna. So that is the Worldwide Fund for Nature. Hindi ko alam na marami pala. Ito pala, Waves for Water, Save Philippine Seas, Earth Island Institute, Greenpeace Philippines, yan, kilala ko na yan. Earth Foundation, Philippines Biodiversity Conversion Foundation, and Marine Wildlife Watch of the Philippines. Marami itong mga ito siguro ngayon ang natitreaten. Next, please. Naglagay
Sister,
lang ako.
ano pa? Green Convergence.
Green Convergence, of course. Kayo yung kasi host eh. Ngayon, nilagay ko lang ang SAM kasi hindi ko naman mailagay lahat. So, for example, yung Greenpeace, yung ito, don't only focus on food, water, and climate, but on wildlife as well. In fact, they exert effort to ensure the survival of the rarest and most endangered species in the country. Tapos meron yung Philippine Seas is to promote community empowerment, environmental education, and shark conservation. Next, please. 4 lang para meron tayong visual naman nitong mga activists. Yung Greenpeace is to protect natural landscapes at and more from the environmental threats such as perilous waste imports, coal projects, and illegal logging. Siguro yung Haribon Foundation, ito kilala ko sila kasi ang isa sa kanilang member kumuha ng Women's Studies, Masters in Women's Studies sa Saints ko, although he is a man. Haribon Foundation uses their widely known platform to save different bird species and to conserve their habitats as they empower and educate people. They also partner with various groups and local. Sabi ko lang yan para meron tayong visual idea, sino ba itong mga environmental activists na magiging threatened by that law. Next, please. Next. So, what I would like to say, even before the act, talagang marami na ang namatay at marami na ang pinersecute. Now, for this part, I really got the facts from Marlon Pareja, Associate Professor sa kanya. Since President Duterte assumed office in 2016, sinabi na rin ito ni Neri, at least 113 environmental and land activists were already murdered, which is much higher during the previous administration. Now, these murders are connected to environmental and land issues such as mining, commercial logging, agro corporations, agricultural land conversions, coal power plants, establishment of ng talagang mga specific examples. Next, please. Next. Sabi niya, on the first, sorry. Before that, please. Go, ayan. On the first day of Duterte's presidency, Grandmother Gloria Capitan was killed after opposing coal storage facilities and a San Miguel Corporation-owned coal power plant backed by Standard Chartered and the there are about 27 coal, di ba? What do you call this? Coal, yung ginagamit natin na source of energy, which is very polluting, no? Pero meron ng pinatay because of that. Si Renato Anglauda was murdered after he protested the grabbing of indigenous land in Bukidnon until 2019, used by local landowner and mayor to produce food for Del Monte, Philippines. Alam nyo naman, yung as far as your one is fueling violence with Ruben Arsaga killed with apprehending illegal loggers felling trees to furnish boutique hotels. Can you imagine? They will do that just to have boutique hotels. Kasi ano ba to? I just want to move this one because it's blocking my way. What do I do with this? Okay, can you please move it higher if that's possible? Higher lang ng konti. Previews, please. Mining, a farmers association leader, Jimmy Saipan, was murdered by hitmen following protests. So, okay, the next one na lang. Next, kasi I cannot read. In May 2017, 4 masked men burned the house of Patrick Angelia, a government forest ranger assigned to the enforcement section of the Community Environment and Natural Resources Office in Surigao del Sur. Government forester Lito Ayala was shot and wounded by a suspected timber poacher in the Puerto Princesa City. In February 2018, armed men believed to be goons of illegal loggers fired at a group of forest rangers during an operation in Infanta, Quezon. In June 2018, forester Dominador Lucas was gunned down after leaving his house in Antipolo to head to the Department of Environment and Natural Resources in Tanay. Ito pa, yung parang defenders had been killed according to Kalikasan People's Network for the Environment. Yung 113, ito lang kay Duterte, but from 2001 to 2018, Kalikasan has tallied 223 deaths, a majority of which related to mining. Half of these killings took place in Mindanao. And as you see below, it says that in none of these cases has justice been given. for next. Next, please. Now, aside from the killings and persecution, the affected population, wherever the mining is, logging is, plantation is, the affected population are continuously harassed, forced to be evacuated from their homes through indiscriminate firing and attacks by the military, red-tagged and faced with Trump charges. All this Trump up siguro yun. All these are done not only by the security forces and legal machineries. Alam niyo po, Alcadeb is one of those yung partner ng Saints ko for 25 years. Pinatay yung kanilang chair in front of all the community. Because daw yung school na yon is a school for the NPA. Sino ang pumapatay? Kasi yung mga military, they are actually protecting the mining that is going on there. So, ATA, no? Next, please. Next, please. Now, I found this, interview very, very touching, no? There was an interview made by this Scott Simon, and ito yung, I just took some parts of the interview because I want to highlight what these environmental activists are really facing. Sabi ni Scott Simon, yes, country for environmental activists, according to a report from the watchdog group Global Witness. Environment, global na to, no? They say that 30 of the 164 activists killed in 2018 were in the Philippines, where Rodrigo Duterte is president. Now, ito si Leon Dulce is an environmental activist. Is the national coordinator for the Kalikasan People's Network for the Environment, and he is joining. He was interviewed by. Has your work and the work of other environmentalists gotten more dangerous under President Duterte? Ang answer ni Duterte, this is true. If you look at the data on an annual average, it has multiplied by almost 8 times compared to the administration of President Macapagal Arroyo, which ran from 2001 to 2010. And it spiked 2 by 4 times compared to the previous administration of President Aquino. And it's only just 3 years that we are suffering. Next, please. Marami bang question, pero ang huling tanong ni Simon is, Mr. Dulce, do you feel safe? Ito ngayon ang sagot ni Dulce. Safety is no longer in the vocabulary of environmental defenders or, activists in general in the Philippines. They are being told that we are terrorists. We are enemies of the state, no? And then the more extreme cases is when they think they vilified you enough, they start sending in the... And Duterte is clearly not seeing this as an exercise of democracy. He's seeing it as a threat to his rule in the Philippines. So he's sending in so-called investment defense forces in the military that are organizing paramilitary groups to crack down on these exercises of democracy. It's a situation where you will always fear for your life. But then, if you are not going to do the work you do, who else will do it? Wow, admirable, no? Fear is going to continue to do the work because nga naman, who else will do it? Very good question for all of us. Next, please. Ngayon, the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020 was passed on June 5, 2020. It was signed on July 3, 2020 by Rodrigo Duterte and is effective July 18. Next, Wednesday na yun, di ba? Tomorrow na yata, 2020. Okay, now, next. Activists. We have shown the atrocities that happened even before the anti-terrorism law is to be implemented. But with the ATL, these atrocities, including warrantless arrest, shall rise since Section 4 of the Act defines act of terrorism. And then he quotes that, and we do not need to go into that because pinakita na yan ni Neri. Next, please. This overbroad definition of terrorist acts will only worsen in the Philippines. Even its provision that it shall not include advocacy, etc., to so-called safeguard, is followed by an exemption that these are only exempted as long as these are not intended to cause death or serious physical harm, etc., etc. Authorities can still find a way to use this law against environmental defenders. As makikita natin, nagagawin din nila sa other activities. Ito po, I got this. They said this to me. Ito ngayon ang campaign nila. Our international campaign against tyranny, environmentalists say junk terror law. Next. Pinaliwanag nila kung bakit. The Philippines' new terror law, formerly known as the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020, is a draconian measure that would worsen the already atrocious human rights situation in the Philippines, a country previously tagged as the in 2019. Under President Rodrigo Duterte's administration prior to the terror law, nearly 20,000 environmental defenders have been subjected to various human rights abuses to date. With the passage of the new law, it can only get worse. Next. What's wrong with it? Ito na, they pinpoint the particular provisions. Overbroad definition of terrorism can stifle free speech expression without consent, detention up to 24 days, remove safeguards of previous law of Human Security Act. Next, please. Next. Ito ang panawagan nila. Sign the petition, excuse me, next, before that pabasa muna. Sign the petition. We are calling on local and international environment and climate advocates to sign our petitions to have the Duterte administration to the Philippine Congress repeal the terror law. That very famous little teenager, si Gerta, she actually signed what do you call this, solidarity, support, a message to the environmentalists, especially the youth in the Philippines. That is really a wonderful gesture on our part. Next, please. So ito ang conclusion ko po. Our Mother Earth will suffer when those who care for her are terrorized and killed. And therefore, I join the Terrorism Act. Yan lang po. Salamat.
Maraming salamat, Sister Mary John. You heard our resource speakers. They're both very good. Sister Mary John, Mary John's background on human rights, defending human rights is also very precious. Attorney Nery's explanation. So we can now conclude whether we are for or against this anti-terror law. For myself, I'd call it terrifying law or terror law, the law that creates terror for all of us, the endangered species. You know, the environmental defenders, environmental activists are now an endangered species. Even without, like, you know, Sister said and Attorney Nery said, 113 deaths during the time of President Duterte. So with this law, we can expect that it will, the abuses will rise. We know of, we have reported cases of harassment and intimidation of those who are working against the Kaliwa Dam, because presents serious problems to our indigenous communities and our ecosystems, our ecological health. So the indigenous people are being intimidated to give their approval of the Kaliwa Dam. So this was before the passing of this law. Discussion for Kamayan Forum. So I hope that this will help all of us to do what we need to do. So that ends the second portion of Kamayan para sa Kalikasan Forum. We are now going to enter the third portion. I hope our resource speakers are ready with pen and paper to take down, since we will take all the questions all at once, one after the other. So to give you the rules on how to participate in the open forum, let's listen to Dr. Carlo.
Excuse me, before that, I would like to say right away that I might not be able to answer your questions because I said I'm not an expert. So I would expect that the members.
Sister, yes, but okay, sister, we will take that into consideration. But we would also want to listen to your opinion
Okay.
when you can give it. Okay.
Okay.
Are you able to stay through the whole thing, or do you have to leave early? I heard that you have to leave at 4:30. Is
Yes,
that
because
right?
we have grocery. We have a neighborhood grocery.
Okay. In that case, after the question, to give your comments, if not answers, but just comments or answers, so that we can hear from you before we leave. Is that all right, sister?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So now let's listen to Dr. Carlo Garcia for the how to participate in the open forum.
Okay, thank you,
Carlo.
Marie. In addition to what you have just said earlier, let me add this. Raise your hand to indicate that you want to speak or ask any question. Participants box, then click raise hand at the lower right. If you are using a phone, do the same, then click more to see the options. Your intent will be noted by the moderators and you will be able to speak during your turn. Please say your name and your organizational affiliation before you speak. And as mentioned earlier, you may also write your questions in the chat box. Right now, we have 2 questions. And in the interest of time, please keep your questions.
Yes, thank you, Carlo. And for those who do not understand, who are technically challenged and do not know how to click the box, the raise your hand from their box, you can physically raise your hand and we'll do our best to identify you, okay? So keep in mind what Carlo said. Give your name and your organization, who you are directing your question to. Okay, let us begin.
I can read them, Marie, just in case no one would like to ask questions at this point.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Go, Tessa.
Okay. Thank you so much, Attorney Colmenares and sister. You've really opened my eyes about this anti-terror bill. Okay, I've heard that the next move is actually to go to the Supreme Court. Now, how comfortable are you with this move, knowing that the Supreme parang under the power of the president, it seems? How independent are they? So I'd like to know your view on this move. Will it really help going to the Supreme Court? So that's one question. Another question is, how did this process come about that this government was able to pass such a law? What do you suggest should be done so that this can never happen again? People or anti-dissent or anti-balance of being able to say our view. So how did this come about? What's wrong with our system? And how can we change it? So those are my two questions. Thank you.
Okay, next question, please. Is there anyone who wants to ask a question among our 70, more than 70 participants from Mindanao,
Ma'am
from
Esther is raising
Palawan,
her
from
hand.
yes,
Ma'am Esther is raising her hand.
you were saying, huh? Anyone? We are waiting.
Can I ask a
Ma'am
question?
Esther po is raising her hand.
Yes, okay. Esther Pacheco.
May I ask a question? Yes, Kokap. I would like to
Okay.
ask Attorney Colemares if we can use anti-terror law for those who violate my terrorists, right? Can we not use that law against them? That's my question.
Is the question clear to you, Attorney Colmenares? Did you hear that?
Yes, I heard that. Be used against terrorists. I think that's the question.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Any other questions? We are still missing our president, the president of Green Convergence, Dr. Nina Galang. I'm afraid her internet connection is really bad today. We had her last time, and Kalikasan Forum is held every third Friday of the month. So that's regularly every third Friday of the month. You can expect it. Our next Kamayan will be on August 21st. That's an auspicious date. So be sure to pre-register for the August Kamayan. Any other questions?
Ma'am,
Yes?
I am sharing you the chat.
Oh, you want to share the chat questions?
So you can read it.
Yes. Okay. Carlo will read the questions from the chat box. Carlo? Do you see it? Do you see them? Oh,
Okay. From Jeanette Razo of St. Louis University, Baguio. This is my personal thought on anti-terror law. It is self-serving sa mga sunod-sunod na malulungkot na pangyayari sa bansa, denying ABS-CBN of new franchise, etc. Would there still be a national election come 2022? Is anti-terror bill a repackaged martial law? Where do we go from here? And then from Rene Pineda, President, Partnership for Clean Air, also for Attorney Colmenares. Is there a citable jurisprudence for a facial change or challenge rather against the anti-terror law? And from David D'Angelo, National President of Green Party of the electorate elects people who are incompetent to hold positions. Those in the government does not serve the interest of the people anymore. It's a comment. There's no question. From Faina Ulindang, Associate Professor from Iligan Medical Center, also to Attorney Colmenares. What is the action of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines on the constitutional? So far, those are the questions that we have in the chat box. Marie?
okay. Let me put back my video. Okay. We have, those are a lot of questions already, but if there are, may mga pahabol pa ba? Mga huling hirit? Oh, is there a question from David? Or David? Yes? Unmute him. I think you're muted.
According to David D'Angelo, he has no question, but he would like to say something as a comment later on.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. If there are no more questions, I would like to ask Sister Mary John for her last mga bilin. Inspiring to us during the days of martial law, those of us who are working, struggling to preserve human rights. So I can foresee that she can again be a very inspiring icon for all of us as we fight the terror law. So Sister Mary John, may we
Okay.
hear from you?
Although I see that all the questions are for Neri.
Yes.
He is more competent. But the first question about the Supreme Court being independent, certainly it's not independent. Hindi ba? I mean, puro mga fans ng somebody. So talagang hindi independent. But ewan ko kung meron tayong chance, but we still have to do what we have to do to the petition. But before that, sa MAT kasi, hindi lang doon sa Supreme Court, kundi pakialaman din natin yung regulations. Iba po yun. Yun, mabuting papasok tayo doon kasi kahit hindi natin ma-abrogate yung buong law, kung at least mabigyan natin ng konting slant ang implementing rules and regulations, baka maalis natin nung very harmful na effects dito. Yun lang ang sasabihin ko. Tapos, ang ikarawa, how could it be that the Senate did this na wala tayong alam? Ay, ganun talaga ngayon. Ang Senate na hindi nag-ask ng consultation. At least doon sa at sinabi namin yung aming mga puro-puro. Pero ang nakakainis naman doon, pagkatapos na dininig kami, kinopya naman nila lahat ang mga sa Senado. Hindi ba? So ano na lang yung consultation nila sa amin kung kukunin na naman in toto yung gawa ng Senado. But as Neri said, at least some of them now are backing out at nagpapalit ng opinion. I hope that will go on. Tapos yung can the ATA be used against? Siyempre, yung mga terrorists matatamaan dito. Ang ayaw lang natin na binroaden so much ang definition na hindi lamang yung tunay na terorista ang matatamaan nito, kundi yung mga dissenters. But definitely, it's really meant for the terrorists as we understand it, no, ordinarily. But ang masama nito, they broadened it so much na hindi lang sila ngayon ang target, kundi pati tayong mga dissenters. Okay. Magkakaroon pa ng election? Hindi ko po alam. I am not no? Okay. At saka yung mga integrated ba kay Nerian. Panghuli na lang, itong masasabi ko, no? You know, I am maybe the oldest activist in this country. Ako daw the oldest terrorist in this country. Kasi I'm 82 years old. Can you believe that? I am. And ang nakikita ko sa aking buhay, talagang dapat lang tayong manindigan sa ating talagang sa akin na German na fearless people, ganyan. Sabi sa akin, do you think yourself fearless? I said, of course not. But maybe I can act in spite of my fear.
Yeah.
That these are two different things. Lahat tayo takot, pwede ba naman? Kung hindi ka takot, hindi ka na tao, di ba? But you can, if you have a higher purpose, if you feel that what you are doing is really for the good of many, kahit natakot ka, you can act in spite of your fear. And very, very, ano ba yon, yung nakakahawa, di ba? Pag natakot ang isa, mahahawa ng lahat. Pero so is courage. Ang tapang ay nakakahawa din. Kaya kung at least we try to be matapang sa ating sarili na sa ating ginagawa, siguro we can help also to spread yung sa lahat ng mga tao na they will act also in spite of their fear. Yun lang po. Thank you. It's na po.
Thank It's been too long, you know. So I look forward to working with you again on meaningful things. So now that we have heard from Sister, let us listen to Attorney Mary Colmenares.
Yes, thank you, sister. Okay, yes, oo. So, yeah, first question, will there be an election in 2022? Katulad ni kasi, you know, at least merong konting accountability. Ang problema dito talaga is, una muna, may posibilidad ba na ma-cancel? It's really possible, no? Mga martial law declaration na formal. Ang problema kasi ni President Duterte, una muna, in my opinion, this time, ako naman, pag sinasabi ko, pag lawyer at ako at evidence yung pinag-usapan, ito opinion ko. Medyo nagka-problema si President Duterte sa successor niya of being charged in court and going to prison also. And I'm sure ang daming criminal cases na masasampa sa kanya once he's no longer president at mawala na yung immunity niya. Kasi immune siya ngayon from suit eh. Ang kanyang hinugis na successor, I think, in my opinion, is Sara. Ang problema, noong 2019, she was appointed the general manager of the senatorial candidates of the government, of the President Duterte did in 2016, but she did not capture the imagination of the public. So yun ang problem nila doon. Hindi siya nag-take off talaga in 2019. So ang sunod na parang iniisip nilang successor niya was Bongo. Ang problem nila kay Bongo, medyo hirap doon sa Senado, hindi nakaka-deliver ng some sense doon sa mga actuations niya. And secondly, napasok siya inabanggit na naman ni President Duterte, balik si Sara ulit. No, na if you remember his statement about a week ago na, Sara, huwag ka na tumakbong presidente. So I think medyo bumabalik. So that's the first problem, na yung successor na maka-ensure ng continuity niya. Yung second problem, yung electoral history ng Pilipinas. Ang Pilipinas kasi, based sa research sa electoral campaigns, Filipinos don't ever pa nangyari, if I remember right. Siyempre, si President Fidel Ramos wanted Joe de Venecia, talo. Si Gloria Arroyo, Gibo Teodoro, talo. Si President Aquino wanted Marroas, talo. So ganun ang Pilipino daw. Hindi daw sila, ayaw daw nila yung kandidato ng same candidate from the incumbent. So both of those factors may be considered by President Duterte on whether or pero malaking gulo yan. Pag hindi niya tinuloy ang 2022 election, not only for Filipinos and the opposition, but even the international community, business, and other countries, kasi legitimacy ng government ang at stake pag hindi tinuloy ang 2022. Pwede bang mag-facial challenge sa Korte Suprema? I mean, tanong, is a legal question. Is there a jurisprudence on facial challenge? Ang ibig sabihin ng tanong po, kasi diyan ripe na for adjudication or may standing ka. You're the injured person, so you have the standing to go to court. Ito, batas pa lang, hindi pa naman na-implement. Can you go to court on a facial challenge, meaning you're contesting the constitutionality of the law based on its face, not on its implementation? Ang sagot po, yes, marami-rami na rin. In fact, siyempre, galing-galing yan sa US jurisprudence. Facial challenge has been allowed kahit walang injury. Secondly, meron namang local na mga jurisprudence dito. And I think yung Estrada was one. Yung RH bill, is a facial challenge. Hindi pa naman na-implement yung RH, but the Supreme Court tackled it. There is, of course, also yung Sparks, it's another case. Even the Southern Hemisphere case. Basta basically, ganito lang yung sinabi ng Korte Suprema sa facial challenge. You can So yung lahat ng petition involves free speech and freedom of expression. Sinabi na yan ng Korte Suprema sa maraming desisyon. And in fact, if I remember right, oral arguments din kami sa cybercrime law, it was also a facial challenge. Kasi hindi pa naman talaga na-implement yan at that time. So yeah, there are jurisprudence. Ngayon, let's see kung anong tingin ng Korte Suprema if it will allow. Kasi pag hinintay pa natin yung injury, nakulong namin, napatay namin, nabaril na isang activist or dissenter. I mean, we don't want that to happen. Will IBP file, what's the action of the IBP? I heard, nag-usap naman kami ng official. I'm an officer of the IBP, by the way, also. I was appointed as the advisor, national advisor for legislation and advocacy. Nagpe-prepare sila ng petition. So they haven't filed it yet, but I heard that they're going to file it. Ano pa bang ibang tanong dito? Siguro i-treat ko na lang tong iba in one fell swoop, no? Can we not use the terror law against terrorists? Of course, yes. Well, they can always use that. In the same way, can they not use the Human Security Act ngayon against terrorists? Yes, they can. Can they use the revised penal code against terrorists? Yes, of course. May batas tayo against illegal possession? Yes, they can use that. All these laws can be used. Ang punto lang, hindi, tingin natin, they don't need that for the So para kanino to? So parang ang justification nila, at least pwede magamit sa terrorist, hindi pwedeng justification yan. So for example, may batas silang pinasa na ang pulis ay pwedeng buksan ang lahat ng text messages natin anytime, anywhere, kahit walang court order. Siyempre, lahat tayo tututog dyan, di ba? Wala ka namang krimen na ginagawa, pero ayaw mo lang basahin yung text mo. Text mo yun sa asawa mo, text mo yun sa girlfriend mo, sa boyfriend mo. You don't want people to terrorist. But yeah, of course, yes. But it doesn't detract from the fact that the law is draconian. You know? So, and they don't even need the law because there are existing laws. So, yes, they can use it, but it's not even intended for the terrorists. Yung kinoment pala ni Sister Mary John doon sa IRR, it is a forum where, of course, pwede namang pumasok doon. Pero medyo yon, mahirap kasi the law, hanggang dun ng IRR. So kahit hindi mo pwedeng i-redefine ang terrorism sa implementing rules. The law already defines it. So very minimal na siguro magawa doon. And we really have to go for the repeal or the voiding of the anti-terror law. Yung how did this come about? At siguro yung sinabi kaninang how did this come about? Well, yun ang problema. People who do not really represent the country. Kasi ang ating electoral system po is still fraudulent, pera-pera, lalo na, for example, senatorial, pera-pera talaga yan in the sense na kung sino makabili ng pinakamaraming TV advertisement, panalo, more or less. Kahit wala kang kwenta-kwentang senatorial candidate siguro or party list group, basta marami kang radyo at marami kang malaki ang chance mong manalo talaga. No? So that's a problem because kung pera-pera yon, o di yung mga qualified naman na walang pera, di may problema talaga sila. Plus of course the political dynasty. Yon, kahit na wala ka namang magawa at wala kang ginawa na maganda sa buhay mo, ang papilido mo kasi pareho ng dynasty na governor, mayor, congressman natin. So ganun talaga ang electoral natin. And of course I never blame the electorate for the system we we have with us, no? Kasi tingin ko it needs a total eliminate talaga ang corruption and fraud. It must be a movement for reform by the people in general. Yung vote buying exists just because not probably, because people are poor. In fact, may isa akong kaibigan dati na lawyer, sabi niya, ang problema natin kasi binibenta ang boto ng 500 pesos o 1,000. Politiko na to, wala namang na-offer sa kanila na ilang eleksyon na, hindi naman nagbago buhay nila, so benta na lang nila. So siguro hindi naman sa kanila ang sisi. Sa kanya, sabi niya, no, it's the electorate is the problem. Kahit anong educate mo lang nangyayari. Sabi ko, ikaw, pag i-offer ka ng kandidato ng 10,000 pesos to vote for him, will you vote for him? Sabi niya, of course not. Sabi ko, kung 50,000. Sabi niya, malaki yun ah. Sabi niya, pero di pa rin siguro. Sabi niya, boy, 100,000 na yun, iba na yun. O, sige, pareho lang kayo, sabi ko. Ang kaiba mo lang yung presyo mo, mas mataas. Pero, you're going to sell your vote because 100. Di ba? Sabi ko, don't blame them. Ang dapat i-reform natin, yung mga kandidato na namimili, dapat mahuli, makulong. Tapos, yung magkano ba ang magastos dapat, ilimit pababa para, yung walang pera naman, makapasok, yung maraming pera, has to get the Senate seat. So, martial law na ba ito? Well, pag mag-anti-terror law, sabi nga nila, you don't need martial law, di ba? Sabi ni Senator Soto. Kasi daw, klaro na. Ang problema kasi sa undeclared martial law, may hindi siya klaro na martial law. So, dangerous yun in that sense. At least nung si Marcos, inamin niya na martial law, yun ang problem. At ang anti-terror law, grabe talaga ang power ng military at police during that time. Under the anti-terror law. So, in that sense, martial law siya in that sense. Although it's not the formal declaration of martial law. What is the essence of martial law? And in the law, the essence of martial law is military rule. When the military rules over civilians. At ngayon, napapansin ko, hindi pa man yan nabanggit, parang nagro-rule na ang military, lahat ng cabinet position. They're one of the most incompetent bunch of guys ever. Parang hindi nila alam yung gagawin dito sa COVID. Nagkaka-windang-windang sila. And sayang talaga yung opportunity doon. But anyway, that's my opinion. Pero tingin ko, yeah, it's an undeclared martial law pag lalo na ma-declared constitutional ang anti-terror law. So siguro doon sa how did we arrive at this process, yun na rin ang sagot ko kanina. Kasi na-elect natin. How comfortable are you with the Supreme Court? Well, very uncomfortable kasi majority sa kanila ay appointed na ni President Duterte. That's the first. Pero kahit na-appointee, I'm still hoping na they will chart an independent course. Ang problem dito, President Duterte is very intimidating. He intimidates Congress and he intimidates the judiciary. I mean, si Reno. Ang ginawa lang naman ni si Reno, nagsabi lang siya noon kay President Duterte na wag mo naman ipatawag yung mga judges sa Malacanang, mga RTC judges. Kasi independent kami, let us investigate them. Dinagalit si President Duterte. In the end, nahanapan siya ng kung ano nung butas, tanggal siya. So that's really intimidating. Congress naman, tingnan mo, President Duterte practically controls Congress. Kahit speaker, pwede niyang siya ang nagbabasbas kung sino. Really, mas yun ang problem. Pero ang message ko lang doon sa mga justices and whoever, yung message ko rin kanina sa sanabi ko na whether you're pro-Duterte or anti-Duterte, this law is beyond Duterte na in the sense na hanggang kailan na lang siya dyan eh. So, sana tingnan ng Korte Suprema yung impact nito sa lipunan. At siguro yung last point ko na lang doon sa nabanggit ni Sister Mary Jan, she's the oldest, if not one of the oldest. Proud pa yun. ko, pag maabot ko yon na 82 years old na ako, tapos andyan pa rin ako sa kalye, oh really, I'll be very proud nga naman, di ba? Kasi, you know, it shows you're in it eh. Ang forum, ang arena natin kasi is, of course, Supreme Court. As a lawyer, of course, and people, we go to the Supreme Court. Is it an arena for asserting our rights? Yes, Supreme Court. Korte. Kongreso, yeah, is it a forum for asserting our rights? Yes, pwede. But dapat lang, may hindi bakbakin din natin doon sa loob. Sa Senado ba? Yes. At ang sabi ko nga kanina, konti ang lalabi doon sa Senate eh. Sana ma-focus din sa kanilang attention kasi silang original sin dito eh. Di ba? Sila yung original sin. Pero na-focus sa House eh. Pero sa akin, alam mo, yung korte kasi, you have to go through lawyers and judges eh. Yung kongreso kasi, you have to go through congress people eh, and senators eh. Pero there's na protest. I mean, kalsada or or social media, di ba? Eh, hindi ka nadadaan. This is the arena na ang assertion natin, importante. And I think kahit uncomfortable tayo sa Korte Suprema, let us take comfort in the fact that our major victories ever in our history were achieved not through the courts. They were achieved not through Congress. They were achieved through the streets. They were achieved through protest. Whether I mean, we stymied Chacha not because of anything. Outrage lang talaga. Meron ako dyan natutunan in my 3 terms sa Kongreso na sabi ko, ang isang lesson na nalaman ko dito is paminsan-minsan ang gobyerno napipilitang gawin ang hindi niya gusto depende sa pagtutol ng tao sa labas ng Kongreso. We can have the best congressmen and senators draft the best laws and the most articulate na mga paraan but nothing will come out of it without people's support from the outside. So, para sa akin, yun yung importante rin sa atin. Yung mga forums na ganito, yung mga awareness raising, yung mga discussions, very important because this is within our control. It's not Supreme Court, it's not judiciary, it's not Congress. And palaging sinasabi, you've been there, like Sister Mary John has been there for a long period of time. Sabi nga ni Marie question kasi I was a student Catholic Action, officer noong martial law. I was 18 years old and advocating for human rights. We were demanding for student councils and school papers lang noon, and President Marcos issued a warrant of arrest. Kaya allergic ako sa warrant of arrest ng ATC. Kaya issued a warrant of arrest ASO against me. I doubt it kung kilala niya ako. I was an 18-year-old kid. So I was arrested, tortured, and spent 4 years of my life in prison. And people ask, do you ever feel tired? Sabi ko, well, marami. Kahit mga environmental activists, I'm sure sometimes you feel very tired. Nilabanan na namin to for a long time. Buhay pa rin yung mina na to. Buhay pa rin yung, di ba? This encroachment sa dagat, sa lupa, chemicals, lahat yan. We've been fighting this for so many decades. Naman tayo physically, we feel tired. Pero what we have to keep on, at ang isang rason ni Sister kanina, akin yan sa isang favorite quote ko rin na, so long as one is a monk, one has to go on tolling the bell, di ba? Habang pari ka, magbimisa ka, di ba? But more than that, ang tingin ko, the one thing that there are 2 basic principles that kept me on through the years, being an activist after all these years. One is of trust. Trust their destiny. We are not condemned to eternal poverty and repression. Hindi yan yung destiny natin. And we can change this. I mean, I have that everlasting trust on the capacity of the Filipino people. Marcos was one of the most powerful dictators in the 1970s during martial law. And yet, lo and behold, one fateful day of February of 1986, the Filipino people stood up and said, enough. And one of the most powerful dictators in mga laban natin, yung mga Chacha na yan, ang lakas-lakas ng Chacha, everybody supports Chacha, pero semplang yan in the end because the Filipino people gathered that courage. So, para sa akin, we continue to trust the Filipino people's capacity, our capacity to reform this society for the better. And once you trust, therefore you hope. Para sa akin, yun yung aking linchpin dyan. Dahil may tiwala ako sa kakayanan natin na baguhin. Kung wala na tayong tiwala sa mamamayan, di bakit pa tayo nandito sa forum na to? Wala naman palang mangyayari eh. But precisely because we're here, we believe that we can make a difference, we can change the society for the better. Otherwise, pumunta na lang tayo ng abroad at manahimik na lang tayo. But we know we keep on fighting because we trust and therefore we hope. And I'm sure na yung ating trust and hope na yan sa kakayanan ng mamamayan will bear fruit. For in the end, para sa akin, ang will win this battle against oppression and exploitation because we are on the side of the truth. We are on the side of the just. And we are on the side of the people. Maraming salamat po. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.
Maraming salamat, Mary. That was so inspiring. That was a very great parting shot for all our listeners, all our participants. And have some announcements to make. If you have friends or colleagues whom you know would be interested in today's forum but missed this live online session, kindly relay the information to them that a video of the forum will be uploaded to the Green Convergence Philippines Facebook page tomorrow. It will also be uploaded to the virtual library at the Green Convergence website. Please topic, so it would be great if you could ask people to see it. And please stay where you are, as we would like to take a screenshot of all our participants to serve as the traditional batch photo of today's Kamayan Forum. Do the wrap-up since Dr. Nina is not here. Very briefly, the anti-terror law is supposed to give us a sense of security and reduce fear. However, it is giving us greater fear and insecurity because it enables abuses in interpretation and implementation of the law. Moreover, it is unnecessary because we have enough existing. The intent of this law is highly suspicious. What do we do now? As Attorney Mary Colmenares said, we can only protest. Let us occupy all available arenas to voice our protest. We have the social media, we have the streets, we can have small all possible arenas. Let us occupy all possible arenas. Let that be our hashtag, occupy all possible arenas for protest action. And lastly, as Sister Mary John said, fear and courage are both very infectious. It is up to each of us to decide which pandemic we are going to spread.